So I think the last time I filmed one of these videos, I had only filled 3 sketchbooks up, and now I filled 6 or 7 sketchbooks, I'm not completely sure. If you don't know what's going on or who I am, then I'll put a link to a playlist that has a lot of other videos that I have made before explaining exactly what's going on and why I decided to paint every country in the world. I thought it would be a good time to have a look through everything that I've done so far and look through all the countries and also show you some mistakes and some of the things that I haven't shown you yet. Not every page in these books is actually filled with nice paintings. This is going to be quite a long video, so without further ado, let's get to the flip through. So this was the page that I did before I even started, when I was just getting very excited about this challenge, and I think these were even done before the challenge started. This was my very first painting. I'll just flick through these quickly and then we can get on to some of the later, more recent sketchbooks. You might have heard me say in some of the videos that I've posted to this channel that I was trying to finish the challenge before the end of the year. Well, if you can see the date now and how many countries I still have left, I think you might do the maths and realise that I'm not going to be able to finish this challenge before the end of the year, and I think that's okay. We've all kind of been pushing ourselves to do certain things because obviously it's not been the best year, but I think this challenge in itself has been amazing, and I don't actually think I need to finish it before the end of the year. That's just putting unnecessary stress on myself. So my new goal is to finish it before the end of May, which is when I started it last year. So to be able to paint every country in the world within a year, I feel like that's a pretty good goal and slightly more achievable. There are a few pages in the sketchbook that I haven't shown before that are 2 versions of the same painting, and I'm going to show them in this video just because I think it's a bit interesting just to see. So this was actually the first one and I kind of abandoned it. I'm not quite sure what was wrong with it, but then I did this one, which I was a lot happier with, and I really like the sky in this one actually. And as you can see, there are a few pages where I started and then gave up. I think at this point I was still using ink and not using pencil to start off with, and I eventually have recently started just outlining some basic shapes in pencil, just because it can be a bit difficult with perspective to get things right straight away. And again, here I did that here with this painting of Bangladesh. I drew it the second time, and it's usually okay when I'm doing landscapes to just go straight in with pen, but when it comes to things like perspective and cityscapes, like this for example, I did do with pencil because it was a curvilinear perspective, which is a little bit tricky to do just going straight in with pen. And I haven't actually looked through these for quite a long time, so it's quite nice for me to just look through them as well, because there's obviously so many sketches now that it gets a little bit hard to remember some of the ones I did right at the beginning of the challenge. And also it's quite interesting, some of the paintings that I remember not really liking at the time, I actually don't mind them now, and I think that's just because a bit of time has passed and I can see the good parts of the sketches and not just all the problems with them. Now if you remember my Brazil painting, you might notice that there's two here. So I did this one first and I didn't like it at the time, so I did another one, and this was the one that I ended up showing. And I think I still do prefer this second one, but I don't think that this one is as bad as I remember thinking it was at the time. Okay, first sketchbook done. There's still 5 more to go, guys. I hope you've got a cup of tea or something, because this might take a little while to flip through all of these sketches. I remember with this sketchbook there was a little issue where I didn't realise that the sketchbook wasn't fully open, so unfortunately with a few of these sketches there is this sort of white gap down the middle, which is very annoying, but I did eventually figure it out when I was a few sketches into the sketchbook. I quite like this one. I like this style with the pen over the top. I think it just adds something a little bit different. As you can see, I was doing quite a few tests before I actually finished this one of Colombia, but I was quite happy with this one and how it turned out in the end, because I did put quite a bit of effort into it and I just love the colour of that building. I had a lot of fun playing with the white space here with this waterfall, and I was practicing perspective at this point, which is why there's lots of random drawings of people's heads and bodies. I have a YouTube video of me painting this one, so click above if you want to see that. Now, I haven't shown this before, but for Cuba I really struggled to get this right, and I wasted a lot of pages on this trying to get this right. I even did this whole painting of Cuba because I wanted to get the cars in, but I eventually painted this one. So I think that shows you that sometimes it's not as quick and easy as it seems, and it definitely took me quite a while to get this one right. But I like the result in the end. And same with this scene, I just couldn't pick the right spot for, I think this was for Cyprus. I just couldn't pick the right spot, and I eventually settled on this ski scene, which a few people weren't happy with me for because they said Cyprus isn't a ski, because they said Cyprus doesn't make them think of skiing, but oh well. I tried to add this rainbow in here. I don't think it quite worked, but it was fun trying. Sorry, the doorbell just went. On to the third sketchbook. I hope you're all still awake. Now, you might notice that this is a different colour to the first two, and that's because I switched to, so these are the Stillman and Byrne sketchbooks, and for this sketchbook I switched to the Beta series paper, which is just slightly thicker than the Alpha series paper. They hold quite similarly, but I think eventually I realised that I do like having a slightly thicker paper just because you can put slightly more washes down without it getting crumpled, or without it getting all warped. So even though there are slightly less pages per sketchbook, I think it's worth it just in terms of being able to have a few different more layers. I think this one is actually one of my favourite ones that I've painted throughout the whole challenge. I think is when I was getting into perspective and just learning that even though it's obviously quite a abstract scene almost in some ways, like you can still tell what's going on because that perspective is going throughout the scene. So I was pretty happy with that one. As you can see, it took me quite a few tries to get this one right, and I still wasn't completely happy with it when I finished it, but I don't mind it. I just don't think it's my best necessarily. So it is funny that throughout all these paintings I can see some progress, but then at some points I just kind of go backwards. So that's why I think it's important to I drew this one so many times. I think that's why it's important to just keep going. If you do a bad painting or have a bad day or even a bad week, then that doesn't mean that you're necessarily bad. It's just you're having a bad week, and if you keep going and push through, you will end up doing a good painting eventually. So that's definitely something I've learned, is try not to take each individual thing that you do too seriously, because it just really depends on the day and how you're feeling and how much sleep you've had and all these random things that are nothing really to do with how good you actually are at art. This one again was one that I had to try a few different times, and then I think I chose a completely different angle of the building in the end. Don't know what went on there. My arm is starting to get a bit tired. Now you'll notice that there are a few blank pages here, and that is because I went back to the Alpha paper and I just felt like painting on both sides doesn't always work with this paper because it does get a bit warped. So it's fine if you're doing a light wash, but for example with paintings like this I'm using a lot of water and it just doesn't quite handle it exactly how I'd wanted it to. But that's not to say that it's a bad sketchbook, because I really do like these Alpha sketchbooks, but I would recommend them for more if you're doing sort of ink and just a light wash. So even though I filled these sketchbooks, a lot of it is blank spaces, unfortunately. I probably should go back through them and use the pages that I have skipped I remember really liking this one for India just because the colours that I chose I think were really sort of reflective of the mood of the painting and that sort of hazy dusk feeling, and yeah, I just really like the colours and I feel like that's quite important for India, so yeah, I was happy with that one. A lot of people have been sending me DMs on Instagram asking me where Italy is, and this is Italy. I'm not too sure why, but no one can seem to find it, so I have definitely painted every country so far in alphabetical order. And then I went back to the beta series sketchbooks after this, and this is what I've been using for the rest of the challenge, and I've bought a few more, so I'll be using these ones for the rest of the challenge, if you were wondering. Now, this one was really hard for me. Japan. There was this scene that I really wanted to paint, and for some reason I just couldn't get it right. And then I found this other scene, and it took me, this many attempts to get it right. So this is an example of things not always going quite according to plan, and probably just me putting too much pressure on it, especially when it comes to countries like Japan, which I know are just so beautiful, and I just really want to represent them well. So I find myself sometimes putting a bit too much pressure on myself. But then the next day I did this painting, which I still really like. I think this also is one of my favourites, just with the light and the shade. I think I got that quite well, so I guess that's a good example of when things aren't going well, just do another painting and you might be happier with that result. And throughout this whole challenge, I've definitely gone through different phases of liking what I'm doing and then not liking what I'm doing. And it's kind of just taught me that the important thing isn't really the result, it's more just being consistent and keeping going with what you're doing and just consistent practice. Even if you feel like you're going backwards sometimes, ultimately you are getting better, even though it might not seem like that when you've just done a bad painting or a bad drawing. This again, I was trying out a new technique with some acrylic ink and it kind of failed, so I went back to the watercolour for the second attempt. And I don't always show these attempts, especially not in the videos that I post on Instagram and TikTok, so if you're watching this video you're definitely getting a bit of behind the scenes of my various failed attempts at painting. This was the first one that I did in a portrait format, and when I did it I thought, well, why haven't I done this before? And I actually really like painting that way around, so yeah, I need to try and remember. Obviously with a lot of landscapes it doesn't quite make sense to do it that way around, but sometimes there is a scene where it just makes sense to do it in portrait rather than landscape. Okay, so I got confused and it turns out I actually have a whole other sketchbook. So this is actually the 7th sketchbook. Oh my god, I've seriously just lost track. Like, I actually forgot that I had done this one as well. So let's just keep going, and this is the last one. So this is a painting that I did for New Zealand, but I ended up changing it to a different one. And you'll notice I do that quite a lot. I also did this one twice. I still don't know which one I like best out of these two. Let me know in the comments. I honestly have no idea. I can't even remember which one I ended up posting, to be honest. Yep, so I did so many different paintings for New Zealand, which I never have shared before. So I did that one, and then I did that one, and I still didn't like them, so I eventually ended up with this one, which is the one that I posted in the end. And this is the second portrait painting that I've done. I think it works well for tall buildings, it just kind of makes sense. And I enjoyed doing this lava one. Unfortunately the paper ripped slightly because I think it wasn't completely dry when I shut it, which is annoying, but I really enjoyed doing a volcano. I don't think I'd done one up until this point. So this was the very first sketch that I did when I was painting 10 countries in one day. So if you want to see that video, you can click up here. And I actually think having a bit of a time constraint is a good thing, and I actually quite like a lot of the paintings that I did on this day, even though I was very rushed and I could only really spend about half an hour on each one. But I think that's probably a good thing, especially when it comes to watercolour. It really helps to be quite quick. Okay, so that is the last one that I'll be sharing today. I need to label all of these because I'm getting a bit confused. Yeah, so thanks for watching. If you stuck around to the end, then you are a real fan, because that took a long time and my hand is quite sore from flipping through so many sketchbooks, but it was fun to have a look through. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.